Good afternoon, everybody. It's approximately 12 o'clock. It's December 7th. I would like to request access to certain information regarding the government accounts. When I do this audit, which I have my phone, I'm gonna put it on a clock right now because I'm now billing you guys on time because you're wasting my time and I am not in the mood anymore. All right, I just put it on. So I'm going to explain what exactly I did as of my job, my position prior to this. You have to have accounts, journal entries, and records. You cannot mess around with data. That means any type of data that belongs to courses. That's like Department of Education. That means anything dealing with personal data, confidential, etc. You cannot have someone's personal information. You can't have someone's records. Now, what do I mean by that? That means TransUnion, Equifax, Experian. They cannot have anything on a database system that's a public website. What do I mean by that? That means they have to have those records safe. There are privacy laws. So let me explain this because I want you to hear this crystally clear. When you are born and you are given a Social Security, that Social Security has a social debt on it. The social debt is linked to the Vatican. The Vatican is not allowed to have any debt on debt. It is considered fraud. So as an accountant, when you go to accounting school or financial or etc., and they explain to you, hey, this person is being born and they have revenues and expenses and etc., you have to keep into account there are certain formulas. There's certain bylaws, there's certain things, there are policies and procedures. There's certain healthcare rights and etc. that is associated with this. So I'm going to explain this. Assets equals liabilities plus capital. Capital has to deal with shareholders' equity. That's this formula right here. So I'm going to re-explain this for the 50 billionth time. This is something that you need to hold into account to begin with. You cannot have someone's information that's private on a public website without their permission. The problem is with Social Security, and it comes with people's health insurance to begin with. You are not allowed to do that. It is considered fraud. The government, to begin with, when it comes to this stuff, when it comes to Payron and all these programming and etc., you have to start explaining that to the general public. There is a formula that property taxes and school taxes are made up of. But when you do not follow constitutional rules or regulations, there is essentially a violation. See, when you go into court, as an example, you're going into criminal court, as an example. There's criminal court and there's civil court. And when it comes to being an accountant or advisor, let's say, for example, you have your rights. You have New York State. Each of these states, they have their own health care rights. You have patient rights, and you are assigned a patient advocate. So when it comes to this stuff, when it comes to religion and etc., You have certain rights and certain ethics that you have to follow. So what I'm saying essentially is that you cannot have Experian, Equifax, or TransUnion have your information on that website and have anyone trade your information or use your information without your permission. They were doing that without people's permissions during this pandemic, prior to it as well. Now I'm going to explain what happened in Albany so that you guys are at least aware. They can use this information because the Justice Department does not play games with this stuff. The FDNY and the NYPD were not going to get paid. They had an emergency meeting with all the governor and the mayor. They were not going to pay them emergency funds or etc. There is a contract that they are obligated to follow from Department of Labor, as well as the PBA and the FDNY have their version, which is like the FPBA or the Benevolent Association. They have to follow that. It is the same thing in Long Island here, or Nassau or Suffolk County, when it comes to the volunteer organizations. They have a benevolent association that they're required to give. When they were in the courts in Manhattan, it had to get shipped up to Albany. And I had my boss, Michael Suvro, and I, and as well as two other lawyers that were federal and state, re-explain this information. You cannot have anyone's information compromised, as well as you are required to pay those people a certain salary or wage that they are required to pay in a pandemic, which is considered an emergency situation. They were not paying them. So if you, for example, were saying you have this new rule with minimum wage where you're going to raise the wage, it's great and all you're raising the wage, but it's not an accurate number. There is a formula that I have set up that I have given to them and they are required to use from now on. You cannot be paid on minimum wage. I'm sorry to say this, $20 an hour due to this economy and etc. is not going to be tolerated. You have to pay them health insurance and you have to pay them their wage. When you guys signed into the Obamacare or your health care rights prior to that, when you signed in that paper, you did not look at the bottom section. Department of Health has a policy and procedure, whether you're full-time or part-time. They are required to give like a version of a bill of sale. They have to give the information of who has what insurance. So if you go to a job and you're a CSCA worker or a federal government worker and they do not cover you, they are required to cover you under workers' comp and Social Security. It is the same thing with another thing as well, which has to do with disability. There are three to four things that they are required to do as a business entity. In the State Department with licensing, when you pay for the name, besides the name, they have to give you bylaws, policies, and procedures. You have to make policies and procedures. Number one, you have to give them a salary or wage. Number two, you got to have benefits. God forbid that they get into an accident, so they have workers' comp. Workers' comp is similar to no-fault insurance. God forbid, or there's an issue with you driving into work and you get into an accident. Workers' comp and no-fault insurance is very similar. They are required to have disability insurance. Not only that, they are required to have that. It goes with the other two things, is that they are required to have health insurance. If they do not give you health insurance, they are required to pay you a difference. This is a state and federal rule that they are required to do. They have not checked that. Department of Treasury has required those state departments and federal to check that. You have a union representative. Even if you're in a state where it is the right to work, Department of Labor, and when you have those Department of Labor and Statistics information, they are required to give you exact information of what you're supposed to make. This is the same thing in regards to when you're a real estate agent. You are based on commission. Commission has to be given a standard salary to begin with. And what does that mean, standard salary? The standard salary is you're giving straight commission. You make a sale on a house, they have to give you a certain percentage. That can go according to what the health insurance is as well. Most lawyers, they work on an hourly rate and they work on compensation rate. So there are two forms of incomes. The police department have something similar to that. They were required to make, first of all, I don't know if the New York Police Department knows this, or the Nassau County, or the Sheriff's Department. I'm going to explain these rules because this was in the books as a journal entry. When you go into your job and you clock in, you are getting an hourly rate. That's number one. Number two, you do certain arrests. You put certain people. You do certain things where they have a penal code. They also have besides that for the state, they have also Title 18, which has to do with the federal. They are required to give you a compensation rate for that income. If they are not doing that, they are in violation of the law. I had that patented license, so police officers and sheriffs get paid. It is the same thing with the EMTs as well. The emergency medical technicians, there is a rate. I set up a formula. You have to pay compensation, and if they bring them into a hospital, they have to bill on the insurance. If they don't have insurance, it's a different story. Volunteer organizations, they were not requiring them to do that to begin with. So volunteers, when you get a phone call, for example, and they say, oh, they're with so-and-so and they have a certain person, they were giving them a free rate. They're not required to do that. They can just charge. And they should be charging from now on. If you want to play games with this matter, we're going to play games with this matter. Now, property taxes and school taxes. I set up a WhatsApp account. I'm not going to post this on the Twitter or YouTube to begin with. But if you ever have any questions or need accounting or legal matters in which I went to university and I took those classes seriously, or you have questions in regards to classes or etc., or you need advice or anything like that, I'm going to leave it on my Twitter as well. The company that I built set up these laws for rules and regulations that the Constitution has to uphold. Most of these state and federal departments are not following these rules. Not only that, you have an incident where a Cash App settlement has to begin with. You do not settle with any Cash App or any of those things. Equifax, Experian, or whatever, if you need me to do any legal or medical assistance, legal or accounting assistance that has to do with that matter, or anything prior to that, which is the pandemic, that means you have every right, if you really want to, that you can call me and you can have me testify. I have no problem doing this. So if the FDNY or NYPD were discriminated in any way, I have the right information because I had to testify up in Albany and in Manhattan. They had me testify. I was mandated to do it. They are required not to remove this. If you guys remove this, you are a complete imbecile. Because not only that, YouTube, that is affiliated with Alphabet, you are required to get a compensation besides this. This was not only done in New York, this was done in California and the other states. You are required, let me repeat this, you are required to get a compensation. There was emergency funds that were required to be given to you in a check form. The state and federal department settled these matters. That's in regards to the vaccine and etc. They are required to do that. If they do not do that, they are in violation of the law. They can be put in prison. So I just would like to leave you guys this message. Thank you guys. Have a good day.